Manchester United got a 1-0 win versus Burnley last night, and the most important thing to take from that is the 3 points. Hopefully this will give us a momentum boost going forward, as we do have a nice fixture list ahead. But one of the big differences that Ten Hag pointed out in this game compared to other games this season is we started to see the players fight together. The players wouldn't stop fighting till the end. Even though Manchester United weren't fantastic yesterday, even though they weren't brilliant yesterday, the players wouldn't stop fighting till the end defensively. And Erik Ten Hag brings it up as a very important thing that is needed to progress this season. So we're going to get into 5 things we learned from Manchester United, 1, Burnley 0. But before we do that, I want to get into the news and some of Ten Hag's comments. So unfortunately, Marcus Rashford did suffer a car crash last night. It was said by The Sun, if we scroll down here, that Marcus Rashford was involved in a serious car crash after returning from Man United's victory over Burnley Saturday evening. Rashford was less shaken, but no serious injuries. So luckily, no more injuries. And most importantly, Marcus Rashford is okay. Bruno was present at the incident and urgently offered to help those involved. But yeah, Rashford is shaken, but no more injuries, which is good. Unfortunately, there's a few idiots online saying, "Oh, I wish Rashford had got injured, so Ten Hag would drop him." If you actually say that, check yourself out in the head. Check yourself out in the head. I don't care if you don't like Rashford. There's actually 1 or 2 people I've seen online wishing he got injured. How weird is that? Like, how weird is that? Like, I don't know if you want Garnacho to play left wing and you want Rashford to be dropped. That is fine. But some of the comments and 1 or 2 idiots online were actually saying, "Oh, I wish it was worse." I just think, who are you? Like, are you okay in the head? And I just think there's some idiots online. But most importantly, Rashford is okay. Thoughts are with Rashford. He's probably a little bit shaken up. But I'm really glad that he is not injured. But a few idiots online making comments that did wind me up. But I want to talk about Ten Hag's comments about the match. I do want to get into the match and 5 things we learned. But first of all, I want to pick out a few things Ten Hag said that I personally really agree with. Erik Ten Hag said the team spirit and how they fight together was impressive. It was a team attacking with 11, defending with 11. Yeah, and he was absolutely spot on. He said the team was attacking with 11 and defending 11. They supported each other. And Erik Ten Hag says, look, the players wouldn't stop fighting to the end, which was impressive. Now, we weren't great in that first half, and I don't think we're physically fit, and I don't think we had the best team, and I don't think we were perfect. But I do think one thing we saw today, and I will discuss this in the 5 things we learned, is that the players wouldn't stop fighting together. I think McTominay and Rashford were some question marks over work rate and ethic, but I think in that second half, everyone kind of thought, yeah, we've got to get this win over the line. Because, look, we weren't great, but I actually do see for this game, the players worked really hard out of possession. Johnny Evans, Delo was rubbish, but worked really hard out of possession. You know, Reguilon was ill and tried to play, and they're like, no, Reguilon, you've got to come off. Amrabat comes on, does a good job. You know, you can see Varane coming on and fighting. And maybe, you know, it was nice to see that defensively we kept a clean sheet. And I think a big part of that is because I do think we were working really hard together. And I think when you have players like Bruno Fernandes, Rasmus Højlund and Hannibal Mejbri that have some of the best work rates in football, sort of in that midfield and attack, maybe it set more of an example to the rest of the squad. But I actually think Casemiro had a much better game. He gave 100%. You could tell he was fighting. I thought the back four was fighting to the very end. I think the most important thing from this game is that the players wouldn't stop fighting. And I think that fight is something that we haven't had enough of this season. And you know, for me, I don't think we're there physically and athletically. I don't think the system's quite right. I know we've got some injuries, but what was never excusable was when we lacked fight in those kind of big games. Another key thing Erik Ten Hag mentioned about the game is said last year we had the most clean sheets in the Premier League. We were disciplined and followed the rules. When we do that, it's difficult to play against United. And he makes a good point here. Obviously, the opposition was only Burnley, but I want to say something quickly before I get to the 5 things we learned is the first 2 games of last season, we lost to Brighton and we lost to Brentford, and we got absolutely obliterated. And then Ten Hag went back to the football basics. We played a very not great, not attacking, not brilliant style of play. We were winning games 1-0, but he went back to this kind of boring, sort of negative style of play just to get us the 1-0 wins over the line, where we'd let the other team have a bit more possession. We'd sit back, sort of hit them on the counter. And yes, it's not the football that I want to see Manchester United playing, but I think with the injuries we have, I think the most important thing is if we do just be disciplined and follow the rules. And I think today Erik Ten Hag said, look, I want you to lay off the ball a bit. I want you to be a bit more defensive. I want to go a bit more back to basics, get a few more players in the field. And what the players did today was they followed the rules. Now, I wasn't really sure 100% what the system was, But I think, as Ten Hag said, the players worked together, they didn't stop fighting to the end, and they followed the rules, which I think made a massive difference today in the terms of us not leaking goals and just conceding 3-1, 4-1 and getting embarrassed. Because I think, I don't think we were brilliant, but I do think that we were listening to what we needed to do and listen to instructions. And I do want to talk about a few positives. Ten Hag did say that the goal was brilliant, and he said in games like Munich and Arsenal, we played well in spells, but we gave goals away easily. He said we have so many things against us in the last couple of weeks, and Erik Ten Hag said that he's happy that we were a lot tighter at the back and didn't make silly mistakes, and we've got to learn not to give goals away easily, especially after we score. But Erik Ten Hag also spoke about Hannibal Mejbri. He said a few things about Hannibal Mejbri, and I get an indication that Hannibal Mejbri has now made himself go above McTominay in the Manchester United pecking order, because Hannibal Mejbri completely showed him up. I mean, McTominay was useless, and the worst thing for me is I think we almost got 30 million for McTominay. We're not going to get 30 million for him now. Ten Hag said on Hannibal Mejbri, he said Hannibal did his job perfectly. He said Hannibal brought energy into the team, but the pressing from Rasmus Højlund was very good, and we controlled the game that well. And I agree. And I'm going to talk about this in my 5 things we learned. But one of the things I want to bring up that Erik Ten Hag mentioned is that Reguilon, even though he was ill, he wanted to play and he wanted to contribute. And that says a lot about his character. Ten Hag said Reguilon is a player that wouldn't stop fighting, which is what I like about Reguilon. Reguilon's actually been pretty good since he's come in, and he's shown the right attitude. But now it's time to get into 5 things we learned from the game. So I want to start with my number 1 point. And before I get into that, I will say, look, if Manchester United play like they did against Burnley, against any side that isn't going to get relegated, we are going to lose. I'm not saying that the performance was good. I don't think the performance was good, but we got the win over the line. And I'm also looking at the positives, but we will get into the negatives. And the first thing I do think we learned is that Hannibal Mejbri was a bright spot. Hannibal Mejbri gave us something to be happy about. He had a pretty bright performance. I think I liked how he was off of the ball, sort of running at players, eager to win the ball back. I thought he was very good in the second half. And I think you looked at Hannibal Mejbri, you looked at McTominay, and you think, well, this guy's better than McTominay. He's outshone McTominay in his last 2 performances. And I think he's someone that might go above McTominay in the pecking order, especially because Hannibal Mejbri is more of that sort of 8 type 10 player, which is obviously what Ten Hag kind of wants going forward, is more of an 8 type 10 player. He wants to have like 2 8s with a 6 behind, and maybe Hannibal Mejbri can develop a mould into that player. Hannibal Mejbri is one of those, but he's a good player, but he's either going to have a Premier League career for someone like Fulham, or he's going to have a Premier League career for someone like United. And it would be nice to see if he's one of those that has a career for United and how he does. Another thing that was really positive was Højlund's pressing. Højlund's pressing off the ball was really, really good. Højlund provided a focal point, held up the ball, does well using his physicality to get around a centre back. But the only thing about Højlund is he absolutely got no service other than maybe like one low cross and one cross into the box. Højlund is absolutely living off scraps. But I think Højlund's pressing was really important today. I think it led by example, the way that he was pressing, what he was doing off the ball. And I think, when Højlund's doing that work off the ball, when Mejbri's doing that work off the ball, when Bruno's doing that work off the ball, even though I don't think McTominay and Rashford were doing that work off the ball, it meant that we were better as well. And yeah, look, I've said this before, but I generally think the players were given 100% today. I've been very critical of the players' attitude and work rate, but I do think the players were fighting for this win, particularly defensively. No silly mistakes. They worked really hard in the defence to keep the clean sheet. Even though we weren't great, I did see fighting spirit from the players. I did see like a little bit of a mentality shift, something to be positive about. Okay, at least this defence still backs Ten Hag. They're still working for the win. The 4th thing we learned from the game was that Onana was improved. Onana had a bit of a shaky game versus Bayern Munich, but I think the confidence from Onana was brilliant. I thought Onana was fantastic, by the way, yesterday. I thought he was one of our better players. He was claiming crosses, he was coming out, he was sweeping, he was passing, his distribution was good. He was making some good saves. I think Onana had a bit of a shaky game the other day, but I actually think he came out with a lot of confidence and looked really good for United. And I think Casemiro looked a lot better as well. Maybe those 2 goals he scored versus Bayern Munich, giving him a little bit of a boost going into the Burnley game. Obviously, it's only Burnley. And as I've said here, I think my 5th and final thing that we learned is that we're not going to beat big teams playing like this. We need to improve, but it's just one step in the right direction. It's 3 points. Not the most deserved 3 points, not the best performance, but we saw some fight from the players. We saw some positives. We need to get better. We need to improve. We've got a massive injury record, and hopefully we do. With obviously Mount back next week, Varane's now back, Amrabat's now back. Maino will be back soon. Hopefully we do improve. Anyway, smash the like, smash the subscribes. I will be back live tonight at 6:30. See you then, and bye.